What did you learn from the Christchurch mosque shooting, where 51 people died at the hands of someone who is influenced by you above all other people? How did you change your rhetoric after this person shot 51 people?
Great question. So what she is referencing...
What you're looking at here is a group of students in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, dressed up as clowns to make a statement. Why? Well, they were protesting Candace Owens' appearance at a Turning Point USA event just a few days ago. In this video, we're diving into what went down. Candace Owens going head-to-head with these self-proclaimed woke protesters. Buckle up. It's going to be an interesting ride.
One of the craziest media firestorms I've ever been in my life. In New Zealand is what she's talking about. There was a mosque shooting, and at 51, I'll take your number for it, people lost their lives. And apparently, and I actually haven't followed up on the story because I've never been to New Zealand. I don't talk about mosques. I don't talk about Muslims, so it would be very weird if this would have anything to do with me. But apparently, they said that there was a online manifesto. I don't even know if that was officially attributed or if that was just early press. But they found a manifesto of the shooter online somewhere. Again, this was alleged early. I don't know if they've since debunked that. And apparently, the person listed Nelson Mandela as his #1 inspiration, alongside Spyro the Dragon, which I believe is a child's cartoon, Spyro the Dragon. Maybe it's a video game, I don't know. And Candace Owens. Yeah, you know, I didn't feel like there was a lesson other than people are crazy and we shouldn't give credence to homicidal maniacs when they're putting together cartoons and people that fought against apartheid plus a random American in their thought process. So I learned that that was clearly an ill person and that any person who believed or gave credence to a manifesto should probably re-examine why that is. That's what I learned. Thank you very much for your question. Next. It's next person. So we have a long line.
Wow, that was a ridiculous question. Classic clownery. Let's clear something up. Candace isn't out there promoting violence. This reminds me of an old case I covered in a video where she debated 2 outspoken liberal women in Congress. Here's the thing. Context matters, plain and simple. When you're someone like Candace, putting out hours of content every single day, it's easy for people to grab a tiny clip, twist it out of context, and make it look bad. Happens all the time. Even Joe Rogan gets the same treatment. All right, enough about that. Let's check out the next clown in the spotlight.
Hey, Miss Girl. Hey, Miss Girl. Sorry, that was so funny. I actually have here, I was talking to someone outside.
Mm-hmm.
It was like one of your merch people. I don't know.
Sorry, could you just be clear? It's a little hard.
I was talking to, oh my God.
That's good. No, that's good.
I was talking to one of your merch people or like something outside. And I mentioned that, I don't know if you know this about Pittsburgh. It's a very Jewish population. It's awesome. We have great food.
Pittsburgh. Great. Awesome.
Yeah. Anyways, I don't know if he knows about our school. Yeah, very Jewish.
Great.
So I asked him, I was like, are you sure you want to bring Candace Owens in here? Because if I remembered correctly, and in my, not to toot my own horn, but I might have forgotten. I was like, you did say something about Hitler once that was weird. And he said, do you have a source? And I was like, hold on. So I got a source.
Mm-hmm.
I showed it to him. He was like, that's The Hill. It's like a tabloid. I was like, okay, that's fair. I looked it up. My first question is, do you trust Newsweek.com?
Do I trust?
Newsweek.com.
Oh, you can just get to your question. Let's just pretend that whatever you read was legitimate and just ask the question.
I can actually play your response.
Just ask the question. It's fine. Well, whatever you read is legitimate. I'm not going to try to debunk. Just tell me what it said and ask the question.
Fine. Oh
yeah.
God. It's your words here.
No, okay, but just ask. Let's just get to your question.
Okay. Here's the preamble. I actually don't have any problems at all with the word nationalism. Okay. I think that the definition gets poisoned by elitists that actually want globalism. Okay. Seems a lot like, globalism is what I don't want. Whenever we say nationalism, the first thing people think about, at least in America, is Hitler. Okay. You could stop there, but it's okay if Hitler just wanted to make America great and oh my God. Oh, that was a really funny thing.
Can you just get to your question?
All right, ask
yeah, do you have a question? It kind of feels like a filibuster.
It's okay if Hitler just wanted to make Germany great and have things run well.
Mm-hmm.
It says here, adding that it would be problematic if he, quote, had dreams outside of Germany. Then the political commentator said that Hitler wanted to globalize and said she doesn't really have an issue with nationalism. He was a National Socialist, but if Hitler just wanted to make Germany great and have things run well, okay, fine.
Okay.
The problem is that he had dreams outside Germany.
Okay.
He wanted to globalize.
Do you have a question?
What's your question?
My question is, do you stand by that?
What did she say?
Do you stand by that?
Okay, thank you. I'm so glad we got there. It's just amazing. Okay, so everybody has seen this, and actually, I'm sure a lot of you watched my episode yesterday, so her timing is definitely great, where I had a rabbi on who brought this up. Candace said Hitler was okay. You probably have seen the viral clip of me in Congress, where a congressman tried to say, Candace said Hitler was okay, and that is definitively not what happened. Actually, I was speaking on stage alongside Charlie Kirk. Rather ironically, there was a room filled with Jewish people, including a Jewish journalist who interviewed me that night, and when I said whatever I said on stage, nobody cared. That was in November 2018. And then 4 months after that in 2019, some journalists pulled out the clip out of context and tried to make it seem like I was saying Hitler was okay. So let me tell you what actually happened on that night. A person raised their hand in the audience after we gave a speech about, and obviously this is during the MAGA years, about this, need to return to having an identity, a national identity. And a woman asked the question, would you say that you're a nationalist? Because I feel like people are sort of afraid to embrace that term. And so I answered her. And I said, I don't have a problem with the word nationalism. Actually, I think a lot of the times the reason why nationalism, the idea of caring about having like your nation's identity and fighting for policies that are pretty much America first, gets poisoned because people wrongly attribute nationalism to Adolf Hitler. It's not like he was just some guy that was in Germany saying, oh, I just want to make Germany great. And then I went on to say, obviously, he invaded Poland. He had globalist ambitions. Like, none of this was okay. That was the end of it. But, of course, when you pull it out of context and you're a journalist who's trying to smear someone, you try to make it seem like the person, I didn't even mention the word Jews. I mean, there's not even a question about whether we were talking about Jewish people, the Holocaust, nothing. We were simply talking about the word nationalism and why people have hesitancy when they say that they are a nationalist or when they say that they're America first or whatever. So that was it. That was the end of it. There was no talk about saying Hitler was okay or this was great. It was just a topic about whether or not nationalism is rightly attributed or whether or not it is a dirty word. So I hope that provides some clarity for you.
Nope. Your question was like 20 minutes. Sorry, next.
I think we've given you really more than enough time.
Like she said, context matters, and so does intent. This kind of thing has happened to others too, like Jordan Peterson. Right now, he's dealing with a situation in Canada where he has to go to court because someone filed a complaint against him. And what's the complaint based on? Things he said during his appearances on the Joe Rogan podcast. He's been on that show 4 or 5 times, with conversations lasting hours. You don't have to agree with someone, but it's not okay to assassinate their character by piecing together random clips, stripping them of context, and spreading misleading information. That's just wrong and creates a false narrative for others to believe. All right, let's shift gears and check out the next claim.
So, okay. So, I'm going to bring up something that you previously had said in the past, but you also brought up again in this speech, so it is relevant. You had talked about climate cooling. Well, actually, wait, before I do, I wish for your health, your continued health, the health of your husband and children.
Thank you, it's very sweet.
I just want that. I'd always try to start with that. You had said to Bill Maher on Club Random about climate cooling, and you again brought that up. And Bill pushed back on that, rightfully so, about how climate cooling wasn't ever really used in a large academic sense or a governmental sense. So I was just wondering if you would be able to tell me like any level of citation where that climate cooling comes into context outside of the geological formation of volcanoes, which does cause a climate cooling effect due to the ash coming into the atmosphere, causing extreme extermination events.
So I'm not able to provide you a citation because I'm on stage holding a microphone. What I said to you is that if you speak to people of prior generations, they'll tell you that their scare was different. I think it was the generation of the 70s who were told that the climate was going to cool and that freezing was a risk. Now, I can't tell you what happened in their classrooms. Obviously, I wasn't in there, but I can tell you that I bet if you asked around to some adults, they would tell you that they heard, there's some nodding their head right now, about global cooling. So I don't know what else to tell you other than people say that that was their scare in the 1970s. I wasn't making a defense for cooling or warming. I was just telling you that every time you are in a classroom and you're in high school, there's always a different climate scare that they're trying to tell you, and they've now finally landed on in your generation climate change. So I'm not, debating you on cooling. I can just tell you that they got it wrong, and then the earth started warming, and then they got it wrong again because the earth started cooling, and now they've landed on climate change. So I hope that clarifies what I was talking about, just the generational change. Thank you.
For future reference, that clown suggests backing this stuff up. So let's break it down. You're talking about a casual conversation Candace had during a 2-hour podcast with Bill Maher. It wasn't a formal article or a carefully curated statement. It was simply her opinion being shared in the moment. And let's be honest, Maher's own podcast history isn't exactly spotless. He often gets challenged and outmatched by his guests. This shows how much of his late-night persona relies on a team of writers crafting his lines and arguments. On that stage, he sounds polished and sharp, but in a free-flowing discussion, it's a different story. Now, I've got nothing personal against Bill Maher, but he's not really someone I'd follow closely. Still, I've seen enough clips to notice a pattern. Candace completely outmaneuvered him, and it's not the first time he's been out of his depth. Remember that episode with the actor who plays Reacher? That guy, a big, confident Christian, took him apart. The same thing happened when Patrick Bet-David was on his show, and even Jillian Michaels, the trainer, left him scrambling. But here's the thing. These were just conversations, not official statements. People need to stop treating casual dialogue like it's gospel. Now let's shift gears and get back to it.
My bad. You said that sex ed effectively sexualized children, and
Yeah.
I was wondering if you had ever heard of the case in Delaware, close to where you're from in Connecticut, where a 10-year-old girl was able to finally tell her mother that she was being sexually abused by her father because she was able to learn sex ed from the It's Perfectly Normal book. Would you like to comment on that, please?
Yeah, sure. So one example does not mean that it impacts the majority at large. I would very much like to believe and know that the majority of people are not 10 years old being, sexually molested by their parents. What you're doing right now is pretty much what the government does. They find one extreme example and try to make everybody fearful that this is going on all the time. This is actually how they introduced sex ed. Everybody's just doing it, and that actually wasn't true. It's never in everybody. Can you find a somebody? Sure. What is the goal of government? Is there ever going to be something that's perfect? Can you create perfect laws? There's always going to be exceptions. You got to create the rule. You can't have the rule based on exceptions. There are exceptional things that happen all the time. If we said that, one person who got their license when they were age 21 got into a wreck on the day that they got their license, well, so nobody's allowed to get their license, that would be crazy. It's crazy. You have to talk about what the majority is. You have to talk about the majority percentage of experiences. And it is a fact that within 10 years after introducing sex education, the stats completely flipped and the majority of kids were graduating without their virginity, as opposed to prior to that when it was a very different society. Also, which you could say had an impact was that we used to teach the Bible at school. Like, people were basically, Christian. There was a lot more Christianity in the classroom, and that got removed after some lawsuits. I believe that was in the mid-'60s that went all the way to the Supreme Court. But again, the goal of the government is to govern for the whole, not the fringe minority of circumstances that happen. Doesn't make them any less sad or any less awful, but you can't then base laws and everything that you're doing on them. Hope that helps.
No, I don't care. You can only ask.
Yeah, you've already asked a question, so we're going to go to the next one.
Let's talk about laws and why they spark so much controversy, especially when it comes to LGBTQ and trans issues. The frustration often stems from the fact that laws, by nature, are meant to serve the majority, not cater to small, specific groups. It's kind of like cafeteria food in schools. The menu is designed to feed the majority of students. If a couple of kids have food allergies, they bring their own lunch. You don't overhaul the entire system for a handful of people. Laws work the same way. They're built around what works for most people, most of the time. Take debates like pro-life versus pro-choice. Pro-choice advocates often highlight extreme scenarios like cases of rape or incest, which account for less than 0.5% of situations. Sure, those cases deserve a nuanced discussion, but you can't shape laws around rare exceptions. Instead, you focus on what applies to the majority. That's how society operates, by dealing with broad realities rather than fringe cases. And let's not forget, facts matter. Anecdotal evidence might feel compelling, but it's personal, not universal. When two people argue with anecdotes, they're just trading stories, not addressing objective truth. For instance, is America a racist country? I'd say no. Are there racist individuals? Of course. Could someone experience racism? Absolutely. But personal stories don't define a nation. They highlight individual experiences. Now, shifting gears, let's address the clown costumes. My guess? They don't want to be identified in videos like this or on the Turning Point USA website. But honestly, if you're going to make an argument, show up prepared. Look presentable, do some research, and ask educated questions. First impressions matter, whether people admit it or not. Dressing well and showing effort might not make your argument inherently stronger, but it does make people more likely to take you seriously. And let's be real, the left often avoids open debates. That's why we see Candace Owens debating students and not their professors. Academics don't want to risk being owned, because deep down, they know many of these woke ideologies can't hold up under scrutiny. They're like a house of cards, fragile and ready to collapse. Anyway, that's it for this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace out.